Yes, Nilente.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairman. Honorable nominee, first let me ask you, what is your position on green industry and the advantages involved in this, and what is Ghana's policy on the green industry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to be sure that I heard the honorable member right. Is it green industry? Yes, thank you. Mr. Chairman, as we know, globally, the world is going green. And we are following that developmental trajectory and that development path. And we are working in collaboration with other sector ministries to ensure that we also go green in terms of our industrialization plan and efforts. But to a large extent, because we are driving a policy and program that is supporting the private sector, to intervene in these areas, and not government itself making the investments. It also, to a large extent, depends on what we are discussing with our private sector collaborators. But as part of the environmental assessment that is done, that is a major part of what the industrial transformation plan calls for. And it's in all areas, including green energy and other aspects of the green, I would say, green revolution. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman, there's a huge money out there in that industry, so I will plead that we, honorable nominee and I, at the AU on this particular issue, and I'm surprised up to now we have not really taken steps to see how we can get something out of this. But my second, which is also on a decision that has been taken, there has been advocacy for the setting up of a common West African shipping line to facilitate trade on the basis of the aviation industry, ASCA, and financial industry, EcoBank, and the rest. What is your take on this, and how far have the West African countries and the trade ministers taken this particular decision, and what is Ghana's take on it?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I'm happy you've raised, the honorable member has raised this particular point, because part of the challenge that we've had with ECOWAS trade is moving goods across our borders, both in terms of ease of movement and then also freight costs. And we all know that shipping is probably the best way forward if you want to move goods in significant volumes. And so the challenge of developing shipping interconnectivity between our West African countries has always been on the drawing board. And as trade ministers, we've been working kindly with a private sector group in which the chambers of commerce are very actively involved to be able to develop this shipping, ECOWAS shipping network. My understanding is that the major challenge has been a question of resources, but it's on the drawing board. And now that we are talking about going beyond ECOWAS to the rest of Africa, it becomes even more critical, because according to the protocols underpinning AFTA, you can use raw materials from your sub-region, because the regional economic communities are still existing within the belly of the after. So it is important and appropriate for us to now ensure that this regional shipping network becomes a reality. It is not going to be just the governments of West Africa, but then I think more importantly, the private sector with the support from development finance institutions like African Development Bank and then the ECOWAS Bank for Development. But I can assure you that it's a matter that is still under very serious consideration. I'm sure when you were at the ministry, you were also apprised of this. Yes. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, now to something that touches my heart, because you know, I'm the member of Parliament for Dodo. Retail trade and the constant friction between Guta and foreigners in our retail trade sector. And one of the most serious ones we've seen recently is a tendency for foreigners to take advantage of our GIPC law, you know, get married to Ghanaians in order to own shops within the retail market space to avoid the, let me say, the scrutiny of Guta and other Ghanaian institutions that monitor these things. What are we going to do to ensure that we respect the protocols that demand that when it comes to retail trade is a preserve of nationals and indigents?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, the issue of foreigners in domestic retail trade is obviously a very vexed one. And it's been going on for decades. What the ministry has done is to take a firm position on the matter that according to the laws of our country, there are certain enterprises or activities that are currently reserved for Ghanaians, and it's clearly specified under the GIPC Act. Now, the lack of enforcement of the provisions of the GIPC Act is what has led to this tension that continues to exist between foreign traders and then, let's say, Guta and other traders in Ghana. Now, beyond the provisions of the GIPC Act, there are also several provisions in different enactments that have to be respected, whether you're a Ghanaian or a foreigner and you want to engage in retail trade. The challenge that we've had is that even if the provision in the GIPC Act was waived, I'm saying even if it was waived for a variety of reasons, there's still a requirement for foreigners engaged in retail trade to abide by the laws of Ghana. And so what has occurred is the abuse of these laws and regulations. I mean, whether it's immigration laws, whether laws relating to revenue, GRE regulations, or even regulations in respect of business operating licenses that is under the authority of our metropolitan and district assemblies. We cannot have a situation in a country where Ghanaians are compelled by these regulatory authorities to abide by these laws. And then we turn around, to ignore when these same rules are being violated by foreigners. And I think it is important for us also to make note of the fact that it is not about because of the tension that has arisen over the years. We have had very serious consultations between our various countries, and then even at the level of ECOWAS. And we've agreed that foreigners who want to engage in retail trade in Ghana must go by the laws of our country. I know that issues have been raised in respect of conflict between provisions in the ECOWAS protocol and then our domestic law. But the law is clear on this. And as I indicated, even if that requirement of the GIPC was waived, the other regulations have to be respected. What I can say in conclusion, though, is that in order to ensure that we maintain our long-standing bonds of friendship and economic engagement, particularly with our neighbors in West Africa, that we've taken a position that in all cases where there are violations of these provisions, that we must make sure that we engage and consult with each other rather than take arbitrary actions. So that has been the position.
Chairman, I've finished, but let me also inform the honorable nominee that in looking at that angle, I think he must engage more because now the Chinese have virtually taken over the market.
After we approve him, then we can have a private chat with him. Yes, leader, I thought you...
Chairman, thank you. Honorable Minister, let me commend you. Join earlier speakers. Relative question asked by the Honorable Ndila Chivandaford, and I recognize that you've taken the trouble to run us through the existence of the law and all that. Recent times, we've experienced a situation where there was near, or even exchanges, clashes between our nationals and other foreign nationals. Then, all of a sudden, it's been quiet. I think it's been on and off, but I believe this didn't just happen. Are you able to apprise this committee some concrete measures, however temporary they are, that this government, led by your good self, has been able to undertake to restore the seeming quietness?
Thank you, Mr. We, as I indicated, have in particular made an effort to consult with our friends, particularly in Nigeria, in Togo and Benin, about finding ways of addressing these issues that are under reference. We also had a delegation from the Parliament of Nigeria that visited, and we had consultations and engagement with them. So the point that I would like to stress is that the consultations and the engagement that have been led by the ministry under the leadership of our president is what has made it possible for us not to sweep the matter under the carpet, but to bring the tension down. And that is how come you see that the tension is not
The Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. And to build local industries that can produce competitively, to be able to take advantage of this continental free trade arrangement that we are putting in place, particularly Exim Bank that we established, Ghana Exim Bank. How have we, over the 4 years during which you were Minister for Trade and Industry, used the resources there to support efficient local industries to be able to produce for export? Do you monitor industries to be able to assess those that are doing well, that the state should provide support to become big producers for export so that they can compete with the imports that are creating problems for us in our markets?
Thank you, Chair. Honorable Member, I had earlier on made reference to a variety of industrial activities and interventions that the government has been engaged in, all designed to promote and support our local businesses. First, to be able to import substitute or produce for the local market, but more importantly, also to be able to export. So I've gone through this earlier on extensively, whether it's under the One District, One Factory program, or whether it is support at the district level through our business resource centers. But beyond this general program of industrialization, with the coming into force of AFTA, African Continental Free Trade Area, we've established a national office that is currently implementing a national program of action, specifically targeting companies that can produce competitively for the export market, particularly in Africa, but also for Europe and the United States, because we have duty-free and quota-free access to these markets also. Now, these program interventions are supposed to cover a variety of areas. One is enhancing productive capacity. Second is ensuring that there's access to affordable credit, that's working with the financial institutions and banks. The other is also identifying specific market information about market opportunities in different countries. The other relates to ensuring that we provide technical assistance for quality and standards. We are also supporting them in terms of human resource capacity building. Going into exports is difficult, and we are doing that also to enhance their capacity to export. I made reference earlier on, I'm not sure if you were here, that we have a program that is targeting companies that are already exporting to Africa. So these are low-hanging fruits. So we do a needs assessment of these companies so that we can have a targeted program that helps them to enhance their current levels of production. But there are others that are not exporting to Africa, but exporting to other parts of the world. So we are guiding them also now to be able to also identify opportunities for the African market. So a lot is going on, and sometimes it's difficult to have the opportunity to talk about everything.
Nominee doesn't know Honorable Muntaka is here. When you give an elaborate answer, he takes a note and to come in cross-examination. So he says today is Friday, he doesn't want to do his usual thing. So if you give very short answers, you have few questions for you. Yeah. He says if you give an elaborate answer, he will take notes.
Honorable, I thought you were going to ask a question. Yes, Honorable.
Yeah, Honorable nominee and former Minister for Trade and Industry. Now, the issue with exports and imports and local production to substitute imports really is underlined by price. At what price are importers, the goods that are being imported, at what price is it being produced in the country of export, okay? And then at what price is the same good being produced here? Then you add tax and etc. to get whether or not the products will be competitive here. Now, do you have a mechanism for taking items and analyzing critically the inputs and trying to deal with the inefficiencies in the price buildup for the production of those items? Let's take, for instance, rice. We're importing, close to 1 million or more metric tons of rice every year. And then we're talking about producing rice locally. But if you compare the unit cost of production in Thailand, you compare the unit cost of production in Ghana, unless you deal with the inefficiencies in the price buildup in terms of the unit cost of production, you can never be competitive. So somebody will still produce in Thailand, ship it, come here, still handle logistical costs, and still be able to outcompete the local producer of rice here, because he has a price buildup that is just inefficient by imposed fertilizer pricing, by imposed chemical pricing, by all sort of impositions that just produces an inefficient production cost. As a ministry, you have a strategy for a more detailed work on production cost, because I've been at the ministry before as a deputy minister. All the things that you are saying today, we said it at that time, and etc. But the key thing is to zero in on specific items you are producing and the efficiency of what you're doing, and then ultimately the price of the item. How are you able to deal with that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, we have a very comprehensive program of support to our enterprises that we support. And the services are not provided by staff of the ministry. We engage technical experts in many cases that would interrogate the areas that we've identified, that would examine areas that lead to cost buildup and operational inefficiency. So our team of experts and consultants are doing exactly what you're saying. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Honorable Yavon.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Minister, congratulations. Let's move into the area of the automotive industry. Can I proceed, please?
Yeah.
Very well. Late last year, you introduced to this economy an automotive industry policy. And subsequent to that, there were some ensuing controversies between government and car, vehicle importers, garage owners. And I have a lot of them in my constituency. the Europas of the world. We've seen that a lot of huge companies in the automotive industry have decided to set up here as a result of the policy you ushered into being, Peugeot, Nissan, VW, etc. What is the status of this laudable program in the face of these challenges from our local industry players in that sector? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, the implementation of the automobile development policy has undoubtedly yielded very positive results, and I think I do not need to speak to that. But it is clear that there has been some misunderstanding between different stakeholders about the impact and the effect of this policy on their businesses. First is in respect of what has been described in the policy and the Customs Amendment Law as salvage vehicles. Reference has also been made to the issue of overage, importation of overage vehicles. Regrettably, there was a lot of controversy that had been generated over this. But I'd like to assure this House that there is really no need for that tension to arise for a number of reasons. Because if you look at the provisions of the Customs Amendment Act, which refers to salvage vehicle, unfortunately, the law did not specify what is described as physical damage or wreckage. I don't need to get into the details of the law. But we explained to the stakeholders that there will be the need for regulations to be put in place that will further define the implementation arrangements of what is in the law. And I think that to a large extent, the industry players have now come to appreciate and understand that there's really no threat to the businesses that they are undertaking. And that, in actual fact, they stand to benefit from the development of the auto industry in Ghana in a variety of ways. So whether it's the issue of salvage vehicles or the issue of overage cars, we've come to a common understanding with the industry players that in some cases there's a specific requirement that it is only when the Minister of Trade advises the Minister of Finance that certain provisions of the law would kick in. And so it still lies in the bosom of the ministry. And we continuously engage with the industry players to ensure that the implementation of the provisions of this law does not negatively affect their business.
I'm happy the Georgia and Co, the garage owners in my constituency will be happy. Mr. Minister, last year you also saw into being the Enterprise Ghana Agency Act 2020. The economy is largely informal and it's made up of a lot of micro, small and medium enterprises. NBSSI, the Maslow's of the world. How does this link with your 10-point industrial transformation plan for this country, with the BRCs and under the Rural Enterprise Program? Thank you. That's my last question, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, one of the 10 pillars of our industrial transformation agenda is the development of micro, small, and medium enterprises. And so under this component, we've introduced a number of interventions. One is the transformation of MBSSI to strengthen their organizational and management capacity, and also to resource them to be able now to ensure that they are able to efficiently perform their role as an apex body for MSMEs. So part of it was developing the MSME policy to support the transformation of MBSSI. Secondly, as you alluded to, now we've expanded the scope of MBSSI and their reach into the districts with the establishment of the business resource centers, which are under the supervision and oversight of MBSSI. And so to a large extent, the MBSSI is going to become a reformed organization so that they can deepen their support to MSMEs. As you rightly indicated, over 90% of our enterprises belong to that category. And we needed a transformed organization to be able to support these enterprises.
Samuel Kujat.
Most grateful, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, let me congratulate the nominee and indicate that though I do not know how long he will stay at the ministry before he resigns to run for president, I certainly wish him well. The first question is to seek the nominee's reflections on the exciting times in international trade following the emergence of the first African and first female Director General of the World Trade Organization, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. Many trade followers in Ghana had thought that if there would be a first African Director General, it would be the Venerable John Allan Kwejo Kyeremanten. But Nigerians are good cousins, and so it is well in order, and we are all excited about this development. And we congratulate Dr. Okonjo-Iweala. But the question is, this is happening at a time that we are at the forefront of establishing the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. How do you think that Africa, and for that matter Ghana, which is hosting the AFTA Secretariat, can leverage this exciting development at the WTO? The new Director General has said that she would pursue deep reforms. She would address matters to do with protectionism, subsidies, and all the bilateral trade wars that are going on that leaves underdeveloped countries as the victims of all of these power play in rich economies. How do you think that Ghana can leverage this development, the first African Director General, with our Africa agenda to expand the frontiers of fair trade for the benefit of our economies and to yield to job creation as we seek a rebound from the effect of COVID-19?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, as the honourable member has very aptly described the WTO, the main objective of the WTO is to expand the frontiers of free trade. And to a large extent, that's the same objective of the African Continental Free Trade Area, to expand the frontiers of free trade in Africa by liberalizing tariffs and then also ensuring the free flow of goods and services between our African countries. So to a large extent, we are working towards the same objective. And in that regard, having an African as the Director General of the WTO provides an opportunity for us in Africa, whilst we embark on this major initiative of liberalizing trade between ourselves, how we use our collaboration between ourselves as a launching pad to enhance our participation in the global market, which is superintended by the WTO. So basically, if we can deepen our trade amongst ourselves, that will then become a launching pad for us to increase our presence in global trade. And I think that once you have a fellow African, I mean, it can only be to advantage. So we hope we can fully use that opportunity. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
As by way of quick follow-up, has...
Honourable members, today we will want to close early, so do your second one, please. I announced at the beginning, and we'll be smart today, so please, your second question.
My second question, Mr. Chairman, will relate to a rather tragic development that occurred when the Honorable nominee was Minister. Tragic for local business and local initiative, local industries. On the 16th of February, a Sunday, 16th of February 2020, at midnight, the Ghana Trade Fair Company Limited, which is one of the institutions you supervise, it's under your ministry, carried out a demolition of some 28 companies at the trade fair. The managers of these companies indicate that they were taken by surprise, they were not notified. National security operatives are said to have carried out the demolition. I have the pictures of the demolition here. You see machinery, valuable equipment, and office accessories, all destroyed in the demolition. Can you tell us the circumstances of this demolition? Did you authorize it as sector minister? And don't you think that that is a blight on your reputation as champion of Ghanaian industries?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. I think it's unfortunate that we have people who used to be tenants on the property of the Ghana Trade Fair Authority who have been affected by this redevelopment exercise. But as you are aware, the Trade Fair Authority is a private company, although government has had full shareholding in the company. It has a board. The board took a decision that for the redevelopment exercise to go on smoothly, it required the evacuation of tenants from the site. And the relevant notices, as far as I'm reliably informed, had been given to the tenants over a 3-year period. And like with any major development project, you have a critical path that you follow in terms of project execution. And so the continued stay of the tenants was inhibiting progress in the development of the site. And basically the board took a decision that once notices had been given over an extended period of time, that they'll go ahead with the demolition exercise. We intervened at a point to see whether there was some arrangement that could be made to extend the time for them to be able to find alternative locations. And in actual fact, I am aware that the tenants were given some extension in terms of time. But as I said, with project development, it comes to a point where the execution requires you to take certain actions. So that's what I can say about this. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman, I move to my third question just to indicate that this sudden announcement of no follow-ups is constraining. The Honorable John Kuma had follow-ups. I don't know why I cannot have follow-ups. I will take up this matter when we go into concrete. Mr. Chairman,
you know, I've been very liberal.
But I don't think on this instance you are being fair to me.
Do early. Can it be your third one?
I will place on record that you have not been fair to me because these are important issues.
Keep that record to yourself.
What did you say? My third question, Honorable Nominee, will be from the 7th November 2018 official report of Parliament. The last time this House discussed the 1D, 1F flagship initiative. At column 787 and 788, when you brief this House on the status of the 1D, 1F program, we provided the regional breakdown of 1D, 1F interventions across the various regions. Parliament did raise concern about the unfair distribution. If I would have to make reference to the table you provided, the Upper East region did not have a single 1D, 1F project, zero. Upper West had only one. Western region had only one. Volta region had only one. We did request that you consider a fair distribution of this 1D, 1F intervention. My question is, did you respectfully carry out this observation and concern that Parliament expressed? And can you give us the current breakdown of the 1D, 1F initiatives across the 16 regions of Ghana?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, in an earlier question posed by the minority leader, I had indicated that unfortunately I do not have the regional breakdown, but I can assure you that the position is better now than the time that I made this representation to this House. Thank you.
Yeah. Very well. There.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Honorable Nominee. My question has to do with the automobile industry. And we get the sense that Ghana is positioning itself as the automobile assembly hub for West Africa. Would you be able to tell us the level of local content in terms of involving Ghanaians in this industry to enable transferability of skills, which might eventually lead to Ghanaian ownership of some of these companies? Is there a plan towards ensuring that Ghanaians benefit from this industry? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honourable Member, there are different ways that Ghanaians will be benefiting from this industry. The first and obvious one is through employment and skills development, because the majority of the people that will be employed will be Ghanaians, not just at the lower level, but also at the supervisory and managerial levels. Secondly, there's a significant opportunity for Ghanaians to also become dealers. Although initially the trend is for existing dealers who may not necessarily be Ghanaians, who are now the local partners of the, let's say, big automobile companies. We, as part of our policy, have insisted that we need to decentralize the dealership of these locally produced vehicles, particularly as you move out of Accra, Kumasi, and the big centers. So I think there's general agreement, and the current dealers who are working with the big companies themselves are very pleased about this, because they cannot overextend themselves to every part of the country. So if my very good friend Honorable Ayariga wants to take up the dealership for Volkswagen in the whole of the northern regions, obviously that becomes an opportunity, an economic opportunity. So that's another area that they would benefit. Another area that they will benefit is also in terms of component manufacturing. Because in the long run, when you assemble cars, you do not optimize your benefits until you start producing the component parts. And so we know that we have the capacity in this country with the support of new technology, let's say, to develop Swami into a major component manufacturing hub. And we've had discussions with the global companies that are already showing up in this country. And they are very excited, because the closer you are to your components for the assembly, the cheaper and more efficient it is for you. So they are very interested in supporting local content, not just in terms of employment, but in terms of component assembly. Thank you.
Yeah, my second question is back to one district, one factory. You just described it as a revolution, and we think the initiative was looking at restructuring the Ghanaian economy to make it more local-based. With hindsight, will you say that in an effort to cover the entire districts in this country within 4 years was a little bit overly ambitious? And whether you didn't consider staggering the projects so that you scale them up as we went along? Or maybe that consideration, political considerations, overwhelm some of these other considerations. With hindsight, what will your thoughts be on the manner in which the one district, one factory was implemented? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam, Mr. Chairman. Honorable Member, I can understand why, from a conceptual point of view, this might have sounded a bit ambitious, that you would want to have a factory in every district. But I think the philosophy underpinning this was not for government to be establishing these enterprises. This is designed to facilitate support to the private sector to establish these factories. So far, I think there's been overwhelming interest and support for this. So, in a sense, I do not think that, on hindsight, that we were being impractical or overambitious. However, I would also agree with you that there are certain parts of the country where we may not necessarily be able to attract private investors in establishing 1D, 1F companies. So in those districts, government has made it a policy that government will intervene directly and incubate some of these enterprises, and then later on offload that to the private sector if it becomes necessary. But I think the principle is that every district in Ghana deserves to have development. And all these districts have natural resources that can be developed. We need employment around the country. So it may be an ambitious target, but if you see what we've done so far, I think it is realizable. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Very well. Gisela. She's not ready. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable nominee, I'd like to ask you about the ECOWAS single currency program, which has been with us for a very long time. I mean, this is a program intended to remove trade barriers, reduce transaction costs, and to boost economic activities within the sub-region. But year in, year out, what we hear is that X number of countries have met the convergence criteria, and then at another time you'd hear that the figure has changed. As Minister for Trade, you've been there for 4 years. What are the reasons militating against the adoption of an ECOWAS single currency? And if given the nod, what critical role do you think Ghana can play to ensure that the ECOWAS single currency project comes to fruition?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I think in principle, we all agree that a common currency in ECOWAS will enhance trade between our countries. And that's why all the government pursued vigorously this. We've not been able to move forward our objective because it's very difficult to be able to get countries achieve the convergence criteria at the same time. I think that going forward, if we look at what done under the AFCFTA, whilst we still hope that we would eventually have the benefit of a common currency, whether it is for ECOWAS or for Africa under AFTA. There's a new initiative which is pioneered by the Afri-Exim Bank, which is called the Payment Settlement Mechanism. And that allows every state party or traders in a state party to be able to use their local currency to trade. That's to, let's say, if they're importing, to import goods from another African country without the benefit of a common currency, which was really the objective of standardizing the medium of exchange. So this payment settlement mechanism, when it is fully activated, at least temporarily, would still facilitate trade as was intended by the common currency, whilst we hopefully work towards achieving that goal one day. As you know, even in Europe, it took quite a bit of time for the euro to become a reality. But it's a target I think we'll still work towards it.
Thank you. Honorable nominee, this afternoon you've spoken extensively about the African Continental Free Trade Area, and we won the bid to host the Secretariat here in Accra. We are all very excited about the prospects of the African Continental Free Trade Area, but I have reservations. Why? Because we've lived with ECOWAS since the early 70s, and ECOWAS was supposed to guarantee for us a common market, a free trade area within the West African sub-region. But these objectives have never materialized. And so, sometime last year, Nigeria, without any provocation, shut down their border at Seme. The shutdown of the border clearly affected Ghanaian businesses. I remember a delegation was sent there to inspect the damage that was caused. On the other hand, we are also being accused of not treating foreigners engaged in the retail trade in our country by member states within the ECOWAS sub-region. What is so unique about the African Continental Free Trade Area? And what do you think would make the African Continental Free Trade Area succeed, unlike its counterpart, ECOWAS?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, there are two fundamental components of the African Continental Free Trade Area, which hopefully will make it easier for us to trade amongst ourselves than within ECOWAS or the other regional economic communities. First is the fact that one of the protocols under AFTA, which we have negotiated, is the Protocol on Dispute Settlement. Honorable Member, being a lawyer yourself, you would appreciate that when there are provisions of law that regulate the trade between, let's say, state parties, it becomes more difficult for people to flout or to, let's say, create artificial barriers, as has happened, let's say, in ECOWAS. Because now, any trader in any state party that feels aggrieved by the action of another state party can file a complaint under the dispute settlement mechanism. And the cost associated with this dispute settlement is a very significant one. I'm taking a cue from what happens in the WTO. So I think it's a major component that distinguishes it from what we now have in ECOWAS and other regs. The second one is a digital operational instrument that has been developed to, again, deal with some of the challenges that you alluded to. This digital platform allows a trader, let's say that is moving goods from Ghana to Nigeria, again to file a complaint on the digital platform, giving specific details of that complaint. And then there are provisions that require the trader in the state party to address that challenge or bottleneck within a certain specified time. So I think that that would also help. I cannot guarantee that we'll eliminate all the barriers, but the protocols and the annexes that have been negotiated in this CFTA is very comprehensive, and I think that will probably make the difference. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Honorable nominee, this is my last question. You've also spoken about the vehicle assembly automotive policy, which was launched sometime in 2019. and the policy has so far yielded some results. So Volkswagen, Nissan, Toyota are coming into our country. But don't you think that this policy is going to suffocate local companies such as Kantanka, the Kantanka Group, which is an indigenous company involved in vehicle manufacture and assemblage?
Thank you, Chair. Honorable Chair, on the contrary, this particular policy is very supportive of local companies that will also seek to participate in the automotive industry. And just to be very specific, because you mentioned Kantanka, you know, there are different grades of licenses that are given to these automobile companies. As I speak now, Kantanka has the highest level of certification. They have what we call an enhanced SKD certificate, so that they can do more than the other global players. And to testify to the importance of some of these provisions in the policy, Kantanka has doubled its production capacity since they were given a license to operate under the framework of the policy. So it is the other way around, and the appeal that we are making is that as many Ghanaians as possible ought to take advantage of this new development, because I can assure you that in the next couple of years, Ghana is going to become the new manufacturing hub in Africa, because this is the first time that around the world you have a country that is now entering into this industry and has been able to attract all the major global players at the same time. You know, almost invariably, they will start with one company that comes in to test, you know, whether it is really something worth it. But to have Volkswagen, Toyota, Suzuki, Nissan, Isuzu, and very soon we are going to give also a pre-qualified license to Hyundai and to Chang'an, you know, and Peugeot also will be participating later on in the year. I think this in itself, the matter speaks for itself, as we say in law.